Folks, you're with Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about, I've seen a few polls recently that allege that just shy of half of Western school and college children, so we're talking between senior high school, say 16 to 21, almost half of these kids believe that, according to the poll at least, and I'll sort of amalgamate a few of these polls that I've seen into one, but 46% of white people, and only white people, are uniquely racist and evil. Straight white males in the West are the biggest threat to the world and to society, and also the biggest threat to equity and equality, interestingly. And climate change, which is all created by evil straight white males, is going to end the world in the next few years. What can these 16 to 21-year-olds do about it? Well, they can be and become full-time activists and spend a lot of time screaming and waving placards and shutting down any alternative point of view. Because if you let white people speak, particularly straight white males, then as they're evil, and then if you let them speak, that means they'll propagate their evil. So by shutting them down, maybe even preferably killing them, perhaps, then we'll create and get closer to this elusive paradise, which is only around the next corner, by the way. If only we can get rid of these fucking white fascist Nazis, Hitler. So let's just have a look at that now. When they say 46% of one, 41% white males are the biggest threat to society, 44% biggest threat to equality, and so on. So they're all between, say, 41 and 47%. They're in that range. So not quite half, but that's a pretty sizable chunk of people. Now, I don't know. I mean, looking at a couple of the questions that I saw on the polls, they were leading questions. So, it's say going through something like this. You do believe Hitler was bad, don't you? Oh, yeah. Did you know Hitler was white? Yeah. Do you think white people cause a threat? Oh, yeah, Hitler was white. Yeah. That line of sort of questioning. So you can stack the polls by asking a certain sort of sequence of questions. Do you believe illegal aliens are humans? Yes. Do you believe that humans should be equal? Yes. Do you believe that illegal aliens are therefore equal to everybody else? Yes. So again, the type of questioning can have a big effect on the answers. But let's just have a look at this idea of we've got an education system in the West paid for by white taxpayers with predominantly white teachers and lecturers that again paid for by the taxpayer, by the white taxpayer, and that are saying that all white people are evil and bad and racist and Nazis and so on. Not really justifying it or explaining why, just that they are, and having to tell the most terrible lies and to omit thousands of years of history in order to falsely make this point. And you've got to wonder how many gullible students there are. I suppose there's some structural issues here that didn't really exist when I was a kid, sort of moving through the education system. Back in the day, kids that were not doing well at school or didn't want to, they goofed off too much, or they were not turning up for school on a regular basis, those sorts of things. Any student that wasn't committed to bettering themselves through education was invited to leave. They more or less sort of show you the door. For a kid that they said, go and get a job, go and learn a trade or something like that. Go out and do something, join the army or become a technical cadet or something like that. And the army at the time offered, I think you had to agree to stay for, I don't know, 7 years or something. There was some time you had to stay, but you could go there and learn, do an apprenticeship and be, fed and housed and given free medical treatment and so on. And then you had to agree to stay for a certain amount of years after the end of your apprenticeship. Maybe it was 5 years or something. So if you joined when you're 15, you get a 5-year apprenticeship where, again, all your expenses are met. And then I think it was a 5-year stint after that or something around that where you had to agree to stay. Anyway, they used to come along and say I remember there was the kids that weren't doing so good. They were like in the bottom class. I think when they were sort of, I suppose, second or third year high school, perhaps, they got these kids together and they actually took them out to an army base, and some publicist or whatever it was for the I think it was the army, apparently explained the benefits of hey, sign up with us and you'll come out sort of a grown-up responsible citizen with a qualification, like a trade, I don't know, electrician or whatever. So there was this. So I invited you to leave. Now, so only the committed students that wanted to do better. These were the students that, on balance, that were prepared to study hard, and there was no affirmative action at the time. So just because you're a black lesbian didn't mean they give you a free pass and wave you through into senior high school or something like that. So in third year high school, there was this sort of mass exodus of the lazy and the stupid, or ones that just couldn't be bothered, or genuinely wanted to go out and get a job, become learn a trade or something, sheet metal worker or lathe operator or whatever it might be. So there's mass, and I remember and this was in a reasonably well-to-do sort of upper middle class area. There was still, it would have been close to a third of the kids just disappeared in third year high school. There were some that stayed on to what was called the junior school finishing certificate, because it was considered to be an educational qualification back in the day. In fact, you used to get like 5% extra on your wage if you had a junior school finishing certificate. That's how highly regarded it was in the workforce at the time. I doubt that would be the case now. So there was then another exodus at the end of year 10. Similarly, if you didn't do well enough in the exam, the teachers would say to you, look, you're just not doing well enough here. You don't do well in class. You're not attempting to, you're not a particularly diligent or conscientious student. Why don't you go and do something? So that was what happened there. So really, I guess less than half of the kids that started at year 1 ended up going through, in fact, quite a bit less, when they're going through to senior high school. So that the type of student that was there were ones that wanted to learn. They had their parents' support in that, and so they were committed. They were the brighter kids, and so on. Then of that lot, a fairly small cohort ended up going through to university. The standard was high. Again, no real affirmative action going on at the time. So you had to be a bright, diligent, hardworking student, or somewhat of extraordinary gifts in order to get through senior high school and then to graduate to university. I was no genius, so I had to bust my ass big time, but nonetheless. So anyway, the type of student was different, vastly different from today. So now governments are budgeting, including the Australian government, budgets that they want 60% of all the kids that start high school, year 1 high school, that start high school, to go through to university level education. This doesn't include kids going to like technical colleges and things like that. So they pretty much want every student to go through to advanced or higher, tertiary, some form of tertiary education. Now, this is tough because kids aren't any brighter now than they were then. I'd say dumber by quite a measure. But so in order to get that outcome, the schools have to keep on lowering the standard, lowering the standard, lowering the standard. So now you've got kids that would have struggled to make it to third year high school previously are now going on and attending university. So you've got a much simpler group of people who aren't prepared to ask the question. Yeah, when you're around other bright people, it makes you brighter. I believe it makes you brighter. But there has to, the bright people must be in the majority. They can't be just one or two bright kids and the rest are done. That doesn't work. And I remember, for me, just me personally, I was energized by being around bright kids, whether it be at school or college or even in the workplace. When you're around bright people, I personally, at least, I admire the quickness of mind and the sharpness of mind, which you often see, like particularly in Jewish colleagues that I've worked with. I regularly, I've always, not always, but nearly always admired their sharpness of mind. You can channel someone like, say, Ben Shapiro as a case in point, that how quickly he's able to grasp the issue and then respond to it in a coherent manner. That's something I admire in anybody that I see. And so I enjoy working with and am energized working with bright people. But like anything, there's not vast numbers of bright people around, and organizations that are able to gather, I believe, a lot of brain power into their organization, provided it doesn't spill over into petty competition or something, provided they're able to get a lot of brain power into their organization. Those organizations, I would suggest, are bound to do, or far more likely to do well than others. But the type of kids at school are vastly different. They're far more malleable, and they're insecure. They've got massive chips on the shoulder. They really shouldn't be in the education system at all. They're just too fucking stupid, too lazy, too don't give a shit. And yet they're there. So these are the ones that are very easy to get to and say, hey, guess what? We're surrounded by Nazis. That's why the purchasing power of your paycheck is so fucking piss poor, is because of the Nazis. It's not because of the globalists. It's not because of sending manufacturing jobs offshore to China. It's not because of affirmative action. It's not because any of those things. It's because of those damn fascist white Nazis. They did it to you. And this is a message that these sort of low IQ folks that are still in the education system are able to take on board and go, yeah, it was the Nazis, that's right, yeah. And it's a nice simplistic explanation, something they don't have to put a whole lot of brain power to. Now, just to sort of see the difference here in purchasing power and the paycheck, let's just looking at, say, I don't know, somebody, say someone working in a warehouse, and they're getting a little bit of overtime. Maybe they've got a forklift driver's license or something. They when in sort of 1975, someone like that would have made about 130% of the average wage. That's what that job paid, 130% of the average wage. So given the cost of living at the time, you could actually do all right. I mean, you could actually, buy a modest house and run a car and have a family on that sort of money. Such was the way. Now that same job now pays about 65% of the average wage. Now there are different grades of like forklift and that sort of thing, and you can work shift work to boost your pay. But if you're just looking at a day rate, like that somebody working in a warehouse doing that, it's 65 to 70% of the average wage, with a much higher cost of living. So those sort of jobs, they're just not paying the type of money where you can look forward to the future. Anybody in that sort of, anyone making even today, less than the average wage, or even less than 125% of the average wage, is living day to day. They are living the equivalent of a subsistence peasant in an agricultural third world. So they're living that equivalent in terms of the day to day. So they'll have to live in a they'll have to there's a 4-bedroom house where 4 or 5 of them are having to share the place. One to each bedroom and one in the lounge room. That sort of thing. They're going to have to live that sort of existence if they're going to have any sort of surplus cash to do anything with. To be able to go out and, I don't know, have a beer at the or at the cocktail lounge, or have a cup of coffee down at the cafe, or be able to afford takeout food, things like that. So this is the extent to which the future has become, and many kids would see, is completely futile, and that this has been this difference in the cost of living and the relativity of pay, and how jobs that paid enough to live a decent existence 50 years ago now don't pay enough to survive in any situation other than a communal situation, where 4 or 5 people plus are pooling their financial resources, particularly when it comes to things like accommodation. But coming back to this idea of these polls, we've got a very susceptible, low IQ cohort of kids that, because of the futility of their lives, a lot of them carrying debt as well as getting paid shit money on the jobs they get, because of the futility of their lives, they're looking for someone to blame. They're looking for, how can I have purpose and reason in my life? I'll go and wave placards and say everyone's a Nazi, and so their energy and their imagination and what's left of the life that they're going to lead is being channeled into just hating themselves and hating white society. And this is, you've got to give it to the globalists. I know they've got into the teachers' unions and all these other, they've really done a wonderful job of it. They've managed to get at least half the kids, if not more, half the kids in the education system hating their own society. I don't think it's ever happened in history, has it, this? Where your own public services dedicated to the service of the people is actually training the populace to hate themselves. I mean, that's quite incredible. But here it is. It's happening. No one's stopping it. No one seems to want to get in the way of it. Our own Western governments, that are all globalist stooges now, are aggressively assisting, supporting, and enabling this sort of thing, and using white people's taxpayer dollars. White people are paying for the privilege of being hated. You've got to love it. So this is where we're at now, and these polls would confirm it, that there are as many people who hate our society as who maybe are ambivalent or who believe that we're being forced and pushed down the wrong track by the globalists. But that's a stunning achievement. Could you go anywhere in the world and find this level of hatred for your own society? I don't think you would. I don't think it's anywhere. I mean, if you went to Japan and said you hate Japanese society, you'd be lucky if you got a few percent that would say that. And the same, I think, would be for pretty much anywhere you go. But the globalists have successfully foisted and forced this upon our kids and our younger people. And there's no sign of it letting up and no sign of it stopping. And we really need to wonder, how did it come to this? You've been on Tacitus today at your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.